an interview with Bobby Miller on March 29th, 2002. I'll just leave it on. Yeah, you're right. And also, Marsha's family, I've talked to them.
How great.
And,
that's really what they like.
Yeah. I haven't interviewed them. I've only spoken to them on the phone because they went away.
Who did you speak to?
His sister, his name...
Did you speak to Marsha's daughter? Do you remember find Marsha's daughter?
No. I didn't know Marsha had a daughter. No, I didn't mention that.
Oh, really? I'm surprised that Randy didn't tell you that.
Norma is Marsha's sister. Norma Michaels, and she lives in New Jersey.
I believe that Marsha had a daughter, and she was, a street person, and was like a drug addict and prostitute too. I don't know why I think that, but I'm pretty sure that that's true. And I could be totally mistaken and imagined it, but I don't think so. I'm pretty sure that she had a daughter and that there was some kind of bad history with her daughter. But that, and I'm sure Randy's told you the whole story of how Marsha came to live with them and stuff out in
Right, yeah. I haven't done my formal interviews with Randy, but over the years, because Sylvia was working in Randy's store.
Right.
So over the years, talking to Sylvia at the store, I would talk to Randy a little bit. Sylvia's death has made me want to just like speed this up and talk to more and more people that I possibly can. And Randy, I need a lot of time with because obviously they lived together for a decade.
Absolutely.
And Randy.
And he totally was like her greatest champion.
Yeah.
I probably first saw Marsha on the streets of New York like 71, maybe 1971. I moved to New York in 73, but I started coming here in 69 and would come up. I think the last couple of years before I moved here, I was here every week, and I could have bought a house. I spent so much money on the train and the bus coming here.
Where were you coming
from DC.
Oh, okay.
But so it wasn't that far, but still.
No, but that's
but I remember the early days of seeing her when she was like really vibrant and still like running around and hanging out on the streets and with Sylvia and with there were a couple of other queens then. I don't remember their names, but one of them was like so 1940s. She always wore like literally like Joan Crawford, like snood and Joan Crawford fuck me pumps and the padded shoulders. I mean, she was tough and ugly as the day was long. And I remember one time seeing Marsha on Christopher Street, back when Christopher Street was Christopher Street, before Chelsea existed, before that strip existed. And I remember her, this queen walking by with the 40s look on, and her saying, where are you going, girl, or something. And the queen turned around and said, I'm trying to take a fucking walk, and it was like, and she just wasn't having it. And Marsha just kept like feeding her, lines because she knew she was like, and it was like pure theater, it's like pure street theater, Another time, which I write about in my poem, I remember seeing Marsha panhandling one day. My bank was the old chemical bank at Sheridan Square, and I went there early one Saturday morning, or maybe 11:30, 12 o'clock, or in the day to go to the bank machine. And Marsha was sitting on the street panhandling. And I saw her and I said hello, and I went to the bank and I came back home and I had a bunch of appointments. And then it was evening and I was meeting some friends for dinner downtown. I took a shower, got dressed, walked down Sheridan Square. It was nighttime now, and Marsha was still sitting in the same spot. And now her bucket was completely full. She had this like big bucket of money, and I was standing there and talking to some other people I knew, and Marsha got up and was kind of getting herself together, and I was talking to her, and we walked a little ways, and we got about a block away, and there was this other queen panhandling on the street, who was on the streets for years, who was blonde, a white queen, with bleached blonde hair, real tall and thin, and total street queen. I don't know where I'm sure she was homeless. I'm sure she didn't live anywhere but the streets. And Marsha saw her, and she said, Marsha, how are you doing? And she said, not too well, Miss Marsha, I only made like $1.50 so far. And Marsha went over and took her cup to dump money into her cup, and because of how much money was in it, as she tilted it, it just sort of all went. So all of her money came out and like flooded onto the street and everything. And Marcia just like, oh well, and she reached down and she picked up a couple of handfuls back of it, and she said, oh well, hon, get something to eat. And she turned around and went right back to the same spot and sat back down and started all over at like midnight. And she'd been there all day. Another time I saw her, which I also write about in my poem, abstractly, is Marcia walking across St. Mark's Place on Easter, wearing big Easter bunny ears and carrying an Easter bunny basket with big rubber teeth and a puffy tail. Just the crowd just like parted, out of her way.
That's interesting because I have seen some photos of Marcia on Easter, all dressed up.
Yeah, Easter was I think Easter is probably one of her favorite holidays because she always went all out for it. I saw her also, I remember seeing her at, what do you call it, at a memorial for international crisis.
Okay, yeah.
Mine also.
Oh, okay.
And I knew Crisis for years. But
do you know Amy Coleman?
Who?
Amy Coleman.
No,
She's a
but
performer.
That sounds familiar to me.
Yeah, she was in the Hot Peaches Review,
Huh.
and she was a very good friend of Crisis because I've interviewed her.
Oh, I know who that is. Yeah, I do know who that is. I didn't really know her, but I know who she is.
Okay.
Thank you. You're welcome. And then I saw Marcia, I think the last time I saw Marcia was on that block between 10th and 11th, around the corner from where the old Eagle used to be, on the west side, along the west side highway.
10th and 11th Avenue.
Between 10th and 11th Avenue on the 22nd Street. And this is the edited copy. Just give me a second now.
Yeah, go right ahead.
And she was really like down and out, not doing so well. And,
Was this like in the 80s or early 90s?
This is like the year that right before she passed.
Okay.
Probably the beginning of that summer. And it was later that year that she passed. And she was sort of like, and it's funny because I remember distinctly thinking, has she left Randy's because she had all her stuff with her, she was on the street, but it doesn't mean that Randy necessarily asked her to leave or threw her out or anything. It means that Marcia just was very independent. A lot of times she, rather than go back to Hoboken, she'd hang out on the streets,
Right.
Right. I'm trying to think, there's someone else that you should probably interview. Do you know Jim Farrat?
Well, you know who he is, yeah.
He's a really old friend of mine. I know Jim for 30 years, longer. I know him for 35 years.
Okay.
I met him at the gay commune in D.C. years ago. But if I can get a hold of him, I'll give him your number and if he's interested and see if he'll talk to you.
Oh, that would be great.
Because, I know he knew Marcia from Stonewall. I mean, he was at Stonewall when all that happened and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, my experience with Marcia, really, it was peripheral. It was more on the street.
Right.
It was more about just seeing her and knowing her socially and seeing her out, I mean, I wish I had some kind of like great anecdote to tell you about her,
That's
but I don't. I mean,
There's so little information about Marcia that anything anybody tells me isn't.
Yeah, I'm sure. I just still think that the wealth of information that's available will really come from Randy because Randy, because of the store, was there for so long, and Marcia's endless march up and down Christopher Street, and then her living with him too, out there, and he told me it's when I was working on this poem about her. I wrote this poem right after she passed away.
Okay.
I went and gave him a copy and stuff, and he just loved it and put it in the window for the longest time. And then I think it got kind of sun bleached in the window, and then he took it out of the window. I don't know why. Is this the whole poem? Yeah. Here, I'll read it to you. You can have this copy though too.
Okay.
Marcia P. Johnson March. Miss Marcia P. Johnson could march, a true 1, 2, 3, 4 step-in-place step march. She marched that march out of Hoboken and into the Big Apple when it was still called the Big Mary. She marched that march up Christopher Street to Sheridan Square, where she carved out her place in history, where she sat morning to night and panhandled, asking in that familiar raspy voice, "Got any spare change for a dying queen?" Miss Marcia P. Johnson marched across 8th Street, down St. Mark's Place, headed towards Club 82, now the Bijou, but then when the feathers and sequins still ruled there. Marcia P. dressed casual on Easter's Eve, wearing pink and white Easter bunny ears, Easter basket in hand, marching that march, smiling a big Easter bunny smile. The sidewalk parted in awe. Behold, Miss Marcia P. Johnson. She marched that march up 11th Avenue into the parked cars of lonely married men from New Jersey looking for a taste of something special, and she was it. Marcia P., as in pay it no mind, free as the wind at her back on the coldest of winter eves, she marched that march onto the stage of life and sang a simple song and spoke a simple tale to the people, a tale of hope in darkness, a tale of love and acceptance, a tale about the importance of charity. Miss Marcia P. Johnson spent the day and early evening working the crowds at Sheridan Square, only to walk a block to a sister in greater need than she and inquire, "How you doing, kid?" "Not too good, Miss Marcia. I only got $1.50 so far." And Marcia's daily take became hers. She'd save enough for dinner, head back to her spot on the sidewalk, and start over working the late shift. Miss Marcia P. Johnson marched that march into the lives of those who knew and loved her. Marcia P. Johnson found floating face down in the Hudson River one hot July morning. No one knows for certain what happened, but you can place your bets that she went out the same way that she came in, with a fight, with a faith that carried her over to the other side, where she marches still. And those streets so paved with gold will hear the glorified click of her heels forever, while she watches over the children of the streets, while she marches her way into history.
That's beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you for reading it.
Oh, sure.
That is,
But you can have all these.
oh, thank you. Thanks.
You know, I don't know. I just was always like, so it always amazed me. I've lived in New York since '73 and started coming here in '70, and I remember it's like one of the greatest things about New York was like the street people and the variety of characters that you would see. There used to be this guy uptown who thought he was Gene Krupa, and he painted his head with shoe polish.
I remember him.
Remember him? Gone.
Yeah.
I mean, these people are gone. It's like
He had also
yeah,
like
shoe polish, shoe polish sideburns. You remember him? So there was this wonderful plethora of great people who were in New York then, and Marcia was like such a fixture, and certainly, even for people who didn't know her history, who never knew that she, threw the first bottle at Stonewall and, was part of all of that, they just saw Marcia as this great, colorful character on the street, and, her classic line of, you have any spare change for a dying queen, long before AIDS, long before anybody was really dying. She was out there trying to survive on the streets and trying to live on the streets. So when she said that, it was wild that after 1980, when AIDS came into being, that when you'd see her and she would say that, it had a whole nother weight to it,
Yeah.
And she knew it had a weight to it, and she knew that when she said that to people, it made people go home and think, well, at least it did me. It made me think, well, what am I doing to help other people? Well, what am I doing to help people who are dying? I'm also very spiritual, and I lived in India and studied meditation and yoga, and, I have learned through my experience in life that people are not always who they seem to be, and that some people, if only just for one lifetime, they've decided to take it all on and suffer through life and, and get free somehow that way, and to me, when Marcia left the planet, that was like, good for her. She's, she's free of this burden, that was the way that made me feel. But I also have never been homeless, and, and I'm sure it's a great challenge. It's really difficult, and Marcia's life was extremely hard. But for as hard as her life was, she never ever bitched, and she never complained. And on all the times I would ever see her and stop and talk to her, and always give her a couple of dollars and talk to her. I'd say, "How are you doing, Marcia?" "Oh, great! It's a gorgeous night, And then when she would ask you for money, or she'd say, "Spare change for a dying queen," it was like an act, though she could have been dying. Nobody knew. But the point of it was that she wasn't negative and mean, and she wasn't angry, and she wasn't, And I mean, I saw her once. These boys on the street were harassing her or something, and she read them and told them, like she was their mother, and they were shamed by it, and you could tell, they as soon as she said a few things to them, they sort of turned their heads and started walking away, But if she reacted in a different way, had she reacted by being negative or violent with them, that's what she would have been dealing with. But she just went right to this great place of well, you're so lucky you're not homeless and on the street like me, and you're so and look at me though, I'm out here and I'm alive and I'm beautiful, and look at you. Have you looked in the mirror? Oh, I remember my favorite line. She said, somebody said, "Look at that makeup all over her face." She said, "You ought to put some makeup on your face. Maybe you look better." I don't know. I mean, Marcia to me was just this great, wonderful, local, colorful person, and and I've lived in New York long enough now to see all those people go, and then there's only one street person left that I see now who has been around for any length of time. The rest of them, I don't know where they went. What did Giuliani do with them? Did they come around and take them away and put them someplace? I don't, because they're not on the streets.
No.
Of course, the warm weather might bring them back out, but there were so many people during those years that were such a part of the street scene, And Marcia was the queen of all of them. Yeah. I mean, she really was, because she was always there. And when I went to her funeral and to her memorial, and
I'll have to look for you because I have a copy of the tape. Randy gave me
that whole march from the church down there and everything, and then they put that wonderful plaque up. Where'd that go? That's gone.
Where was the plaque?
There was a plaque on a pole down at the foot of Christopher Street that was really high up. So they put it up really high, and I guess whoever bought the waterfront property that's redoing it must have taken it down. But it said, this was where Marsha P. Johnson, the Stonewall activist, and was found, floating on the river, And I don't know. I mean, it was such a shock to everybody when it happened, but and I don't recall anybody I don't know. I mean, you can't really blame the police. I mean, they find a body floating in the river. Where's what kind of lead do you have? How can you investigate a case like that? What are you going to do? But if it had been somebody else, if it had been a rich white man floating in the Hudson, they would have. You feel like they would have done more
investigation.
In this case, it felt like it happened, and and the police were like, it's a suicide. Well, anybody who knew Marsha P. Johnson would know she would never have committed suicide. You don't survive living on the streets of New York for 25 years just to kill yourself, And Marsha had much bigger problems trying to survive that she long ago would have killed herself if that's what that was about. And then there was some kind of story that some people had seen her, some boys harassing her or something earlier in the evening.
There was a guy named Benny, I think Tani or something. But Randy videotaped him actually talking about what he said he saw, which was some people were harassing Marsha down by the river earlier in the day, that they believe she died. And
I remember hearing something about all that, and Randy had told me a little bit about it, but
once again, this guy Benny, it was a transient. Nobody really knew where he was anymore, and it was very hard. Even if you wanted to investigate it, it was hard to. Hard to
I mean, that kind of stuff's hard to find out more about anyway. I can't think of really much else to tell you. I mean,
Well, you've told me a lot. Let me just ask you a couple of questions that you might be helpful with.
okay.
Marcia posed for Andy Warhol for a photograph. Do you, I obviously...
You know who you should ask about that? It's Christopher Makos. Do you know Christopher Makos?
No.
I'll give you his phone number.
Okay.
He worked for Andy Warhol and was part of that whole factory for a really long time.
Is it Makos?
Makos, yeah.
Okay.
And he lives right around the corner on Waverly Place. And quite frankly, Jim Farrat lives in the same building
Okay.
upstairs. And let me see if I have Jim's phone number. I don't know whether I do.
Because I've contacted the Andy Warhol Foundation Museum in Pittsburgh,
They wouldn't.
and they're in complete chaos.
No.
They couldn't tell you anything.
No, you'd have to ask somebody who took on Andy's archives
Yeah.
here in New York. Christopher.
Okay.
You know, and
Can
he's
I
been around
tell him that
longer.
you
Yeah,
gave
you
me
can.
some great-
And he's been around longer than I have, and lived
Okay.
here in the village forever.
Mhm.
And you know, I'm sure he may have even known Marcia as well.
Right.
Um,
But he may have an idea of
but he
that
might.
photograph.
If he doesn't, he would be able to tell you who to get in touch with through the Warhol Foundation in New York.
That would be good, because...
That would know whether there is an archival picture of Warhol that
Yeah.
Warhol did of her.
Of her, yeah, because it's mentioned by a lot of people, but I've never been able to track down...
I seem to recall Marcia
circumstances.
saying something once, you know, for a while it was part of her, you know, Mr. Warhol photographed me, or Mr. Warhol going to paint me, or I'm going to be a Warhol model. I remember her saying something like that, or...
And I think there was a photograph, or, you know, whatever was done, but there was definitely something done by Andy Warhol. And
I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay, well, he's a good lead on that.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right, I have a bunch of names here. A lot of them I know how to contact, but if you could just run down there, and if there's anybody there you know,
Okay.
because some of these people I don't know how to find them.
Okay.
I have for example, this guy Alvin
Give me your-
Baltrop. Sure.
Who?
The first guy on the list, Alvin Baltrop.
Never heard of him.
I have a photograph that he took of Marcia, and
Are you online?
yes.
Betty Bourne lives in... have you spoken to Lavinia Co-op?
No.
You should speak to Lavinia. She was part of the Hot Peaches.
Okay.
With Betty, and Blue Lips with Betty Bourne.
Okay.
R.E. Lavinia. Sorry. Lavinia Co-op. And Lavinia is fabulous, and I'm sure Lavinia will be able to give you a lot of information. And you can tell her that I gave you this
That's
number.
really great.
And she can give you Jimmy's number too.
Yeah, I think I have Jimmy's number now. I got it from Michael Lynch, who was in Hot
And
Pictures.
Tony Nunziata. Penny Arcade might know how to reach Tony. I don't know how to reach him. I'm not even sure whether he's still living, but maybe he is.
I have a note here. Somebody said that they thought he was on McDougal Street, but
Possible.
okay. Have you ever heard of Lola Starr?
Yes, but I don't know Lola Starr.
Okay.
Michael Swer. Oh, that's who that is, Michael Swer. Oh, and Augusto's wonderful. I'm sure. I don't. Do I have Augusto's phone number? He always sends me a Christmas card every year. I don't think I have Augusto's phone number, but I might be able to get it for you if he's still. I don't know where he is. I don't have Augusto's phone number.
Okay.
But
Yeah, he would be helpful because they say
he's
a long
around.
time to
He's
him.
definitely around. You know where you can reach him through? Theater for the New City.
Okay.
Try them and see if they know how to get in touch with him.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you might try. Margot Howard's long gone. Boy, was she an amazing person.
Oh, okay.
She's deceased.
Okay, good to know that.
She wrote a book.
Yeah, I was a white slave in Harlem.
Right. Yeah, she's long gone. I think Penny Arcade will really be able to give you a lot of information, too.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and you can tell Penny that I told you to get in touch with her. I would send her an email, and she'll get back to you. She's really good at it.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Just send her a note and tell her I suggested you contact her.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, you're helpful. Slowly but surely, each person I talk to knows a few other people. So.
Oh yeah, I think it's a great process that you're doing this.
And
so
I'm
cool.
recording all the conversations because if it gets to the point where I really can't put something together, I would like to have everything for an oral history recorded, and then I can always put it in the Gay and Lesbian Archive, History Archive.
That's cool.
So that in the future, if people want to know things, they can go back.
Because I mean, this poem was published in my second book, which I published 5 years ago, and I got a letter from some kid who was like, do you know anything about Marsha P. Johnson? I understand she's like a great hero of the, and he was just some young kid who was fascinated with that this person had like started the Stonewall Revolution, It's like, well, that's a little stretching it a little bit, but she was there, definitely, and she certainly contributed to what was going on, But I think that, totally. I think that's a great idea to do that in the gay archives. I mean, not that there aren't already, people in the gay world who are, trailblazers or people who really helped create our history, but nobody took the time to write about them or to record them and I think that's like really important.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to do something on Marsha, because there's always that curiosity, like, what happened and why. Why is nobody really doing it?
I don't know. If you use these photographs in anything, I didn't take them. So
you didn't take them?
No,
okay.
I don't know who took them. Randy gave me the original of these. These are scanned.
Right.
When I was like working on my book, because I wanted to. I did illustrations with my poetry, and so I used those two pictures in my book.
Okay. Yeah, there are a number of pictures. I have when Marsha died, Randy put a lot of Marsha's papers and things. Not that she really had any papers of any interest, like birth certificates or any of that kind of stuff, but just photographs and this and that. And so I have those, and there's a number of pictures in there. And that's why, in fact, what I have on my list, there was 2 different photographers that took beautiful pictures of Marsha.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's amazing that
everybody loved Marsha, everybody knew Marsha, God knows who she knew. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like when you're on the street like that, you're open to meeting everyone. I can't give you much more of my time because I have a dinner date and I have to get ready. But I think it's great that you're doing this project, and if I can be of any further help, just call me.
I will. And also have your email address from when you responded. And you've given me really good information. It just leads me to the next person.
Cool.
So this is
I would
great.
definitely go after Penny Arcade, and I would definitely go after Christopher Makos. Christopher Makos can be a little bit. You can turn that off now.